Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Talkin' Rangers podcast. Today is Wednesday, October 11th. It is the day before the New York Rangers kick off the 2023-2024 season. The NHL season got kicked off last night. More games tonight, more games tomorrow. And then after that, the grind really officially starts of 82. Joe, thanks for, or how's it going, man?
It's going good, dude. I'm excited. We got one more day till the Rangers start the season.
Yep.
Some good hockey yesterday. Obviously, a lot of people are watching Bedard's debut, so it should be fun. Should be fun.
Yep. Yeah, it's exciting. Last night, obviously, Blackhawks, Penguins to open things up, along with a couple other games as well. Vegas got a win coming off their Stanley Cup final win last year, so they started off their 2023-2024 campaign on a high note. But the New York Rangers start off tomorrow against the Buffalo Sabres. They open up the season with a whole lot of road games, a long road trip to start, and that starts tomorrow night with the Sabres. Before we get into that, before we get into the first couple games of the season, the lines seem to really come together. As the last time we spoke, the last time we uploaded an episode, the roster wasn't fully complete. The preseason was still going on. But as we sit here right now on Wednesday, it seems like things are pretty much official with the way the lines currently look for the New York Rangers. So what are your thoughts going into tomorrow night's game in the season right now that we have a better idea of what these lines look like? And do you have any surprises of the final roster for this team going in? It seems pretty, I think, kind of what we expected. But what are your overall thoughts?
Honestly, I was a little surprised that Coley made the team. I thought maybe he would have came up later in the season. I am excited though. He seems like he's ready to play. He's physical. I think he could be a really good third line player to start off with. I think he's going to be playing with Trocheck and Wheeler, so that can be kind of like a grinding line that could
Yeah.
bang bodies in the offensive zone and then maybe like shut down like I don't know about the top lines, but it seems like they could be pretty good defensively too. So I was pretty shocked about Coley making the team. I'm happy he did.
Yeah.
Other than that, it seems like pretty predictable. Lafreniere is going to start. Looks like on the second line is on the right side, which is
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, he's a left winger, but if he can play the right side too, that's just a benefit to the Rangers because they have so many left wingers on defense. Pretty easy. I mean, it was going to be what it was.
Yeah.
The only thing that maybe I could have seen going another way, maybe it was a fourth line. Maybe VC would have been in the lineup, but I think that's just going to be a rotation on those fourth line guys. Other than that, pretty much what I expected.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree too. As you mentioned with VZ, it looks like him and Jones will probably be the healthy scratches to start, but you could definitely see kind of a rotation, going on there in the last line with Gaudreau, Bonino, and obviously Pitlick looking like that's going to be the fourth line to open up things tomorrow night. I agree with you too. I mean, Coley making the rosters, as a third line winger is definitely, I'm happy about that. I wanted, him and Hoffman were the two big guys of camp that were two young guys that a lot of us were excited about. I think we can all agree he probably had the inside track to make the team. He was probably most ready. Othman, obviously, still developing and, potentially could get caught up later on in the year or next season, depending on how the season plays out. Kakko playing right wing on the first line. Lafreniere will be second line. We talked a little bit about Hedel. He'll be the second line center. And as you mentioned, Trocheck will be the, third line center. You expected that to see how that kind of played out. I know you mentioned a little bit, with Trocheck ending up in a third line, but our last episode, we talked a little bit about, Hedel and Trocheck, who would get kind of that center spot, whether it was second line or third line.
Yeah, I thought it would be just from what I've seen from Lavalette, like early in the training camp, it seemed like he favored Hedel. I know Hedel got hurt, missed a couple weeks of contact, but I know he's like fully going now and everybody's healthy, it looks like. So I think that is the right move, putting Hedel on that second line, just because he's such a young guy and he can really develop into. I think he could score 30 goals this year playing with Panarin. It's pretty exciting. Yeah, I like the move. I think Trocheck, he can play. He's a fine second line center, but I feel like that really shows you how deep this team down the middle can get if he plays on the third lines. But other than that, I think it's a good move, and I'm excited to see what Hedel can do.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I guess we could kind of do another question here, and then we can get into the games and stuff like that. My line, I mean, I guess I could ask you too. I guess I'll start with you. Which line are you most excited about if you had to choose one, and which defensive pairing you're most excited about? I'm looking forward defensively. I'm looking forward to seeing what this Gustafson Schneider pairing could do because they had a really good preseason. I think they have a lot of potential. I'm also very high on Gustafson going into this year. I think he fits a lot of what this team needs. So, what are some of the lines like? What is one line or and a deep pairing maybe that you're most excited about from a forward standpoint, obviously defense standpoint.
I think it would have to be the first line. I mean, especially when you
Yeah.
get Kako up there. Like I'm expecting so much out of Kako this
Yep.
year. I think he's going to take a huge leap. I think he's just developing confidence on both
Yeah.
sides of the ice. And I think now it seems like last year, it was 50-50, him bouncing back from the first line to the third line. I think this is going to be the year where you're going to, unless injury or something else happens,
Yeah.
he'll be on that first line. And I think that line meshes pretty well together. I think they were one of the better lines in the league last year when they were playing with each other 5-on-5. So they should have a big year, hopefully. As far as the defense, again, I kind of agree with you. I think I'm curious to see how Gustafsson is because I've been pretty impressed by him. He already knows the system, and I think he matches up well with Schneider. They complement each other. I think all the pairings match up pretty well with each other.
Yeah.
I would probably say the third pairing to see what they can do. What about forwards for you? What do you think? What forward line really interests you this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the first line is definitely the biggest one with, Kreider, Zibanejad, and hopefully they can kind of elevate Kakko's game too. But if I had to go outside the first line, I'd probably go. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how that third line plays out because you're putting Coley with two veterans in Trocheck and Wheeler. And, I'm interested to see, kind of what Coley does to start the season and just as, he's just to see if he can carry what he did in the preseason and training camp to the regular season, seeing how he develops and plays well. Trocheck, obviously a solid third line center for us. And then Wheeler, was a nice free agent acquisition that's, good, solid piece on that third line that isn't obviously the player he once was, but we don't really need him to be primes, Blake Wheeler. We just need him to be a solid, right winger for us. And I think he will be. So I'd probably go third line would be the other line. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing, Coley, obviously. I'm just excited to see what he can do. As a young piece, you're always excited to see what those guys can do. So I'd probably say that outside the first line, that would be it as well. But, of course, Lafreniere is going to be a big focal point to the second line. Panarin as well. Can he bounce back after a rough postseason last year? So those are obviously all storylines as well. But those would be some of mine. My outside of the first line would be probably third line, but second line coming in close because I think that's,
I think they're
Lafreniere,
all, yeah.
big.
I think all
Yeah.
three of the lines are pretty
Yeah.
interesting, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel
Especially I think Hedo could have a big year if he plays. If Panarin can continue his regular season success, I feel like Hedo could be a player that could really benefit both of each other, benefit with each other. Because I feel like Panarin doesn't shoot the puck a lot, and I feel like Hedo does have a trigger. He shoots the puck, and he's got a lot of speed. So I feel like that kind of helps Panarin's game, where he's kind of more of like a slow developing vision guy with the puck. And then if you can hit Hedo cutting into the zone with all that speed, I think that could be something that could be a pretty good year for that line too. But all the lines are exciting, I think.
Yeah. I just hope we get I just, we all want success. So just hopefully that all four of these lines pair up nicely. And, of course you feel good about the first line with Kreider and Zibanejad being, your two best guys. And then, going down with some of the other depth pieces as well. So that's kind of what we have there for the lines. Again, no real surprises. We kind of expected this, a couple here and there, but all in all, that's what your forward lines and defensive pairings are going to look like going into tomorrow night. So that's what we'll kind of get into now is the first couple games of the season for the New York Rangers. So the Rangers have an interesting start to the schedule. 7 of their first 9 games are on the road. And to open up the year, just 4 games in, they'll head out west to Seattle, and then they'll play 4 games in Canada against the Flames, the Oilers, the Canucks, and then the Winnipeg Jets. So they open up the season with maybe not the best teams ever opening up on their schedule in terms of strength of schedule, but they open up with a lot of road games and 7 of their first 9 obviously on the road. They have the Canada trip, and tomorrow night they also start on the road. Their first game at home will be against the Coyotes on Monday. So they open up tomorrow night, which is where we'll start with the Sabres. Sabres went 42, 33, and 7 last season. They finished 5th in the Atlantic. They're a team that I think is probably going to be a postseason team. They just were on the outside looking in last year on the postseason. They got better this year. They're only getting better. You've got pieces like Tage Thompson and, Darlene, who just got extended the 8-year deal. Zach Benson's obviously an intriguing prospect to look out for. So what are your thoughts going into tomorrow's night's game? A little bit of your thoughts on the Sabres and just the Rangers schedule as a whole before we get into some of these other matchups against the Blue Jackets and the Coyotes.
Yeah, I think the Sabres are a team that I think they're going to make the playoffs. I could see them kind of taking that next step like the Devils took because they have so many
Yeah.
young players. But compared to the Devils, though, they have that goaltender, and I think they have a
Yeah.
couple more. Not like I mean, the Devils have a lot of young, good defensemen, but the Sabres have a lot more depth, I think, on the D line where guys have
Yeah.
like already been playing. Like Owen Power's got a couple years under him,
Hmm.
Darlene's got a couple years under him, so they got that, and then they got Levi, who's a really highly touted goaltender.
Yeah.
So they have that on the back end, and then the forwards are so deep. Like they have so many good
Yeah.
forwards. They're going to be a dangerous team. Luckily for the Rangers, they're not in their division, so they won't be in the
Yeah.
Metro. That could be a plus because I know that
Yeah.
there's a lot of like frisky, like good teams in the Atlantic. So we don't have to worry about that for finishing in the top three in the Metro. But I
Yeah.
think that the Sabres could definitely take a big leap this year. I do expect them to make the playoffs.
Yeah. They were just on the outside looking in 91 points last year. I think the Sabres could be similar to a team like Florida last year, although maybe it's more expected with Buffalo, but a team that maybe people expect to kind of squeak in and then make a deep run. I think they definitely kind of like the Devils, a little bit different, with the goalie and stuff, but I mean they got a good top line with Skinner, Thompson, Tuck, who they brought over in the Eichel deal. They're a good solid team with a good mix of some veteran guys along with, obviously some young guys. What are your thoughts on Zach Benson, their first overall or their first round pick? That made the team as a third line winger. What are your thoughts on him?
I was surprised. I mean, you don't really see many guys because I don't exactly know what exact pick he was, but I don't think he
Yeah.
was like top three. So
No,
a lot of
I
the
think he was
times,
13th or something
a
like
lot of
that.
times you don't see guys like that make the team right
Yeah.
away. He did impress me in preseason. I watched a couple of highlights of him. It seems like he could be a pretty skillful guy. Um, I don't know if I'm going to expect too much out of him because of just the guys that are in front of him. I don't know how much playing time he's going to get, but he could be an interesting player for them this year. I think though there's a chance he might get sent back to juniors. Like a
Hmm.
lot, I think the might be 10 games. There's a certain amount of games where you can play in the NHL and it won't count towards your contract. So I think he'll go the max he can. And whether or not he plays well or not, I could definitely see him maybe going back to his junior team. But he does seem like an intriguing player. And I was a little surprised he did make the team.
Yeah, it's definitely always surprising when a guy not a super high pick comes onto the roster, out of camp. So, especially in his first year since getting drafted. Then you move on to the Blue Jackets, which will be the Rangers' second matchup. That'll be on Saturday. They'll also be on the road. Again, like I think with this Ranger team, and maybe we can kind of segue into this before we get into Columbus and in Arizona, like I expect some early season struggles from the Rangers. They didn't have a good preseason. There's a lot of new faces. There's a new coach, new system. Like I do expect some growing pains. Do you feel the same? But at the same time, like I expect growing pains, but again, like they've got some matchups early on in their schedule where they can win a lot of these games. Like Columbus isn't any good. Arizona's rebuilding. They're probably more. They might be further down the line than Columbus, but they're about similar. They're teams that are going to be, you know, not competitive. Probably maybe lottery teams. So do you feel that they might get off to a slow start, but they do also have opportunities here to rack up some early wins against teams outside of Buffalo? But they've got some teams on their schedule that probably aren't going to be any good this year, or at least that's the expectation.
I mean, it was concerning in the preseason. You could say like, oh, they didn't have the full lineup in there, but for a lot of those games, you
Yeah.
had most of the guys in. A couple guys looked a little rusty. Panarin didn't look great. Lafreniere didn't look great. But again, it's a new system. The thing is, I'm just a little nervous if they go out to a slow start, kind of like last year.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to be able to bounce back again like they did last year, but they have the goaltending. As long as Igor just plays
Yeah.
like 90% of what he can, and that's still asking for a lot. I mean, he's such a good goalie, but if they have Igor, I think they should be fine. But it could be a little concerning if they don't start out strong, especially because of these not layup games, but teams that aren't
Yeah.
viewed as contenders, and then they got to go all the way out to Canada. I feel like that's a little rough going all the way out there right away.
Hmm.
But I'm hopeful that they
Yeah.
can beat the teams that they should beat, and we'll see what happens. But a little concerning just because of how the preseason went.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't pretty, but you hope the energy of the regular season, you'll get your full lineup out there. You hope that just it kind of starts to play itself out. But again, I mean, as long as Igor is Igor, this team's gonna win games, especially earlier in the year. And sometimes that's what gets it done early in the season. Well, I mean, all season long. If you got a good goaltender, you're gonna win hockey games. So Columbus is, last season went 25, 48, and 9. according to the Athletics NHL rankings for this season, they're considered, lottery contenders. They're only considered to get about 74.3% of the points, 74.3 points this season. What are your thoughts about them? They obviously, they brought in Gaudreau last year. They got Patrick Laine, but they had a brutal season. It was kind of blew up in their face in a way. Just the whole big signing and offseason of Gaudreau and all those things, and it just didn't work out. What are your thoughts on them and the Rangers going into the matchup?
I don't know. I mean, they could be a team that I think a lot of people sleep on. I think they got a lot of young guys on their team. I know Werenski missed a lot of the year last year with injury. He's a really good defenseman. I think he's very underrated. Gaudreau's still a good player. They have Laine, who's a very lethal scorer. And then they added a couple, like I said, young guys that coming into the lineup. I think Johnston from Michigan, he should be pretty good this year. They got Fantilli. So they're a frisky team. I think that they could – I don't see them making the playoffs, but they could definitely be a team that's going to, bring it every night and not going to be an easy win. They did have that problem with Babcock, so I don't know if that kind of falters their start a little because I know they have a new coach now. Should be able to beat the Blue Jackets, but again, I think they're a team that's going to take you the distance every night.
Yeah, definitely. And then the Rangers will head back home to play the Coyotes, where the Coyotes, I feel like, have kind of been one of the more mock teams the last couple of years in the NHL, specifically with the whole arena situation, playing in a very small arena, obviously Mullet Arena, which is really the home of the Arizona State University hockey team. So they've kind of been, I guess, mocked a little bit, made fun of a little bit, not so much for their on ice performance last year wasn't good. They finished 7th in the Central with only 70 points. Going into this year, I don't think there's much to expect. Again, I think you can probably agree the Rangers should at least, even if they are struggling, they should probably come out of these 3 games, I'd say, at least 2-1. I mean, you maybe lose to Buffalo, and Buffalo, at home opening night, they're going to be flying around. They've got a lot of expectations going to this year. They're looking to make the playoffs for the first time in a very long time. So, you get to 2-1. I think, would you say that's probably realistic to come out of at least the first 3 to 4, 2-2, 2-1? Because then you got Nashville after that, which I'd say is a lot better than, Columbus and Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, it's always important to get to a good start early on.
Yeah.
I mean, especially because they're going to go out all the way to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Play BC. I know they're going to Seattle. So that's going to be a little tough for them, right away. But they need to, especially with the struggles in the preseason and the new coaching staff, I think it's really important that they can come away with these first couple of games with wins. So I think if you win 2 out of 3, I think that's a pretty good start. Because, like you said, the Sabres opening night for them, good young team.
Yeah.
So they can definitely give you a fight.
Yeah. And again, these are just the first 3 games. If they go 0-3, it doesn't mean the season's over. Now, some people might, fans might be reacting as if the season's over if they start 0-3 and they look like they did in the preseason. But again, this was a team last year that got off to a slow start. And they, again, the season didn't end the way we expected it, or wanted it, but they were able to still turn around to make the playoffs. So, half the time the preseason doesn't always mean much. Not preseason, early regular season. I think last season, what was it? I think it was a 4-game losing streak. They lost, was it 4 game? They had a 4-game losing streak. Then they won a couple, and they lost 3 straight, and they still managed
they had a rough patch there, maybe late November, early December. And I know there was the one game against the Oilers where I remember they were up by 3 or 4 goals, and the Oilers came all the way back in the 3rd period, and then they lost the game to the Blackhawks.
Yeah,
it was a rough patch for them, but then they turned it around. I feel like I don't know if you remember when Trouba and that Blackhawks game, he hit someone and then he threw down the helmet and hey guys, wake up. So
and I think after that they rattled off 7 straight or something. It was something like that to turn it around. So not that we're gonna see a Trouba helmet throw on, in one of these first 3 games, and all of a sudden they're gonna win 10 straight, but it's still nice to get off to a quick start. And again, you look at the schedule, the Rangers have got some games where on paper, they're the better hockey team by a long shot. This is a team that should be a playoff team. They get a couple games, open up the year against some teams that probably won't make the postseason other than, Buffalo, but, definitely a couple games there to open things up. So to close things out, just overall, what are your thoughts and excitement going into, this first week? And I guess one prediction, who do you have scoring the first goal for the New York Rangers this season? And does that goal come on Thursday? Hopefully it does.
I mean, yeah, I'm not predicting them to get shut out the first game. you never know though. But it's been a long off season, like we were talking about in the last
Yeah.
episode, and I'm just excited to watch them play again because I think this team, I feel like, kind of going under the radar this year. A lot of people kind of just looking more towards like the Devils and the Hurricanes, and I
Yep.
still think this team is really good. As far as first goal, I'm gonna say Will Coley. I'm gonna say Coley scores.
Coley.
What about you? Who do you think gets first goal?
I would say Coley. Yeah, that's a good answer. I'd probably say I'm gonna go Heedle. Heedle scores the first goal. You could see him.
I can see.
I'm gonna go Heedle. I'm gonna say he scores the first goal. You got Coley. We'll see who's right. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're both not right. Maybe Mika just slams the slap shot.
I feel like that's like the
yeah,
obvious answer. Like,
yeah, which I would take that.
I was thinking Mika, but I was like,
Yeah.
like let's give a better answer than
Yeah,
that.
maybe a Kreider tip in. That's certainly possible as well because we've seen a lot of those. Anything to put the puck in the back of the net does the job, and that's all we need. So that'll close things out for episode number 2. We'll have a lot more episodes coming your way throughout their season. We'll have another one next week, recapping the first 3 games against Buffalo, Columbus, and Arizona, and we'll get you ready for those next slate of games coming up next week, which will start with Nashville, and then they'll hit the road and face off against some West Coast teams, and then in Canada as well, Seattle, and then they'll head up to Canada. So a lot more content coming your way. Start the season off strong tomorrow night with a victory. Let's go Rangers, and we'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.